Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars, welcome to another classic film review. Today's classic film review is for the 1994 horror drama Interview with the Vampire, a film that is directed by Neil Jordan, and it is based on Anne Rice's screenplay and her book, and it stars Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Antonio Banderas, Kirsten Dunst and Christian Slater. And for those of you who don't know, who've never seen the film focuses on Brad Pitt's character Louis, who in many hundreds of years ago was the master of a plantation. He lost his wife and daughter in childbirth. He wants to die, and Tom Cruise's Lestat is a vampire who answers the call and turns Louis, Brad Pitt's character, into a vampire. However, Louis grasps onto his human soul once he is a vampire, and he refuses for a long time to take a human life. This causes a great deal of friction between him and Lestat, to the point where Lestat ends up making another vampire, Claudia, played by Kirsten Dunst, who is a child vampire, in order to bring them closer together. And that works for a while, but not forever. And eventually Louis ends up meeting up with Antonio Banderas' character Armand in France, as he searches the world for more of his kind. Right, Interview with a Vampire. Now, this is a film that I've rewatched for this review. My wife had never seen it, so we watched it. This is a film I used to watch an awful lot when I was younger. I used to love vampire films, things like that, when I was younger. And this, for me, when I was younger, felt like the definitive vampire film. Beautifully shot. It felt like if vampires were real, this is how they would probably be to me at the time. Watching it now with more mature eyes, I can understand maybe why some might look at this and think it's a little bit pretentious, maybe. I had to describe what I mean by that, but I did, while rewatching this, and I have seen this a lot, this film. It's a few years since I've seen it. It almost takes itself too seriously, this film, but take nothing away from this film. I think it's a remarkable film in a lot of ways. It's beautiful, achingly beautiful to look at. Incredible performances, and they took some risks here with this film, and you've got to bear in mind, I know you've got Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Antonio Banderas, three slam dunks really when you think about it, and Christian Slater. At the time, it was a risk. I do remember when this came out, there was a huge hoorah about Tom Cruise being cast as Lestat. I remember reading stories from, the writer Anne Rice claiming he wasn't right for the part, even though when you watch the extras on this Blu-ray, she says all the right things about Tom Cruise. But I do remember at the time there was, a lot of stories saying he's not right for this part, and he'd not done any villainous characters, not really. I can't remember him up to this point anyway. And Brad Pitt it was quite early in his career, so he was kind of starting to make a name for himself, and you could argue they've just put two pretty boys in this film to try and sell it. However, they both put in brilliant performances here, really brilliant performances. They both really win you over. Tom Cruise nails his performance as Lestat, completely nails it, being likeable, charming, but utterly brutal and uncompromising at the same time. And Brad Pitt, who maintains this humanity throughout the whole film, this grasp on the human soul and his need to still feel part of humanity and stuff. He portrays that sometimes just with the looks in his eyes, the pain and the suffering that he's going through, and I compliment Brad Pitt as well on his performance here. I think they both completely nail it. And one thing as well my wife commented on, and she was absolutely right, when Kirsten Dunst showed up and started doing her bit, she looked at me and she says, wow, she's a good actress. And I said, well, yeah, she went on to do a lot of things. Again, because excuse me, some of the names in this film and all the press it got and things like that, I think sometimes Kirsten Dunst gets forgotten for her performance here. She also knocks it out of the park. There's not many child performances you will see better than Kirsten Dunst's in this film. I think everything they aim to do in this film, they nailed. Yes, the overt sexuality and stuff, it's not subtle. Yes, it probably in some ways harmed the vampire genre, because everyone thought that vampires should be, glamorous and sexy going forward from this film. I guess it probably ended up getting us Twilight. It probably contributed to that. And this film, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to put my hand up and say I've seen the Twilight films. I've seen half a Twilight film and that was enough. But this film is infinitely better than anything in that sort of franchise. It feels authentic. It does feel like you're stepping behind the curtain of this secret society of vampires. You end up feeling sorry for them. You hate them at times. It feels believable, and all the scenes between Brad Pitt and Christian Slater, who is the interviewer, very, very good. About how he wants to. He wants to tell his story. He wants to get it all out in the open and that sort of thing. That was done really, really well. Any issues with the film? Major issues? No. The pacing might be a little bit too much these days for some people in regards to the slow pace. It could have been a little gorier, could have been a little scarier, but I can understand why it isn't, because that's not the tone they were really going for. But I do really think this is a really very good film, and just rewatching it has emphasised that for me. However, I can understand maybe someone watching this these days and thinking, maybe it's a little bit too pretentious, that sort of thing. I do understand maybe some of the criticisms thrown at it, but I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because I just think it's a really good film. And if you haven't seen it, I do strongly recommend you check out Interview with the Vampire, because it is a very, very good film. So I hope you enjoyed this classic film review. Thank you very much for watching, and of course I will be back with more content and reviews on Screen Stars very, very soon.